All right.
Here we are.
Here we are once again.
Yeah.
Good Wednesday, everybody.
Good Wednesday.
We're here on it was a rainy morning.
I slept through it.
That's really nice.
And then I saw puddles everywhere. What?
Yeah.
Right.
But it's a nice, rainy, cooler morning. Being that yesterday we did hit
90 something. I don't know what it was.
Upper 90s.
Upper 90s? Yeah.
Yeah. So Dave loves that weather.
I do.
And so I don't know what he's doing here in Wisconsin. I love the winter and I can't wait for Christmas.
Yeah, I was born to live in Jamaica.
Yeah, no kidding, man. I tell you. But you're in the wrong place, but I guess we're doing the right thing. The forecast here says rain coming. See, check it out. Rain coming. So it might be more rain today. But anyway, welcome everybody to our podcast.
Oh, there's rain coming. Yeah, welcome.
Yeah.
D2 podcast. Unboxing Jesus.
Unboxing Jesus.
Do we have a sponsor? Yesterday's Meals on Wheels.
Oh, yesterday's Meals on Wheels. I don't know.
Are we just giving them honorable mention?
We're gonna give them an honorable mention to Affordable Septic.
Yeah.
Our friends Al and Kathy Patnaud, they were talking about some of that stuff, and we're like, well, yesterday's Meals on Wheels.
Yeah.
If you know what I mean, it's a septic tank service. So anyway, back to what we're supposed to be doing. Here we are on the last Beatitude. It's crazy. It's the last Beatitude.
Yeah.
I hadn't even thought about that.
Yeah, I thought about it a little bit. And
but I think it's just like a summary, like Jesus wraps it all, kind of letting us know, and this new way of living the kingdom, poor in the spirit, mourning, blah blah, this is what's going to happen. more likely.
Yeah, it is, right?
Yeah.
I mean, Jesus, we all like Jesus.
Oh yeah.
I mean, most people do. But he said this amazing thing that if you follow me, people are going to hate you because they hated me.
Well, let me preface it by saying that he probably had the worst marketing campaign.
Yeah. Yeah, he didn't check with the proper the properly schooled people.
No kidding, right? You want to market something today, you want to make it look good, sound good, smell good, feel good, taste good. And Jesus just flat out, finished his little Beatitude introduction or the Sermon on the Mount introduction by just kind of not making it sound good, feel good, smell good, taste good, nothing like that.
Hey, come to me and carry your cross.
That's right. Yeah, really. If you come to me, you're going to have no place to lay your head. Yeah. So, well, let me read the Message version here because I really like this version. I like the other version as well, but I was curious to see what the Message said, and it says, well, why don't you read the original version here first?
All right, the original version, and I think this is probably from New Living.
Mm-hmm.
No, I don't think so. Maybe ESV. Blessed are those who are persecuted for righteousness' sake, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot to unfold there. I mean, blessed are those who are persecuted. All right, we got to check on what persecuted means. Yeah. What is Jesus talking about? Yeah. And then for righteousness' sake, and then because
just not because we've been bad people.
Yeah.
Right?
Blessed when you're persecuted because you sped, right? You broke the speed limit, and then you get a ticket. So happy, consider it a blessing, right? It's like that's not what it means. But the Message version says, "You are blessed." And I love this, when your commitment to God provokes persecution, when you want to live in right relationship with God by submitting to his will, when this results in living opposite of the world, because when that happens, there will come trouble. But rejoice, be glad, take heart. just kind of like the persecution drives you even deeper into God's kingdom. And it's like he's saying, like, when you want to live in right relationship with God, like that's what righteousness sake means.
Right.
So I just thought that was really cool.
Yeah.
So what does persecution mean, Dave?
What does it mean? It's just disappeared. There we go. Well, as we talked about yesterday, I think a great example was Paul.
Okay.
Saul of Tarsus pursued
Mm-hmm.
the new believers.
Mm-hmm.
Right? He followed them. He went from town to town with permission to bring them back in chains.
Mm-hmm.
And so he consented over their deaths. He imprisoned them. He chased them down, pursued them. And that's really the picture of what the word means here.
Mm-hmm.
To be persecuted is to be pursued, to be chased. To be
hunted down.
Hunted down, yeah.
I mean, that's what literally means, like to pursue in a hostile manner, to harass, to trouble, to molest people. I mean, molest is more like an older word, but it means to bother, to cause something to be uncomfortable, to be mistreated, to suffer persecution on account of something. Like to be hunted down. Like when you're talking about Saul, he hated what new believers represented because it went against everything that he grew up believing was the right thing, and he actually considered them wicked and wrong and worthy of prison and death, like infidels, I guess, if you want to call that word. Like, and I don't mean it's not a slam to any religion. I'm just saying whoever does not agree with your beliefs, you're going to chase them down and
kill them.
Yeah. Get rid of them.
Yeah.
That was good. Get rid of them. Yeah.
Right. Because as we talk about unboxing Jesus, Paul had this box.
Yeah.
And if you didn't fit in that box, you weren't worthy to be around. But interestingly enough, that's exactly what happened to Paul when he went back to Jerusalem at the end of the book of Acts.
Yeah.
They hunted him down. So he suffered. He knew Jesus showed him how much he was going to have to suffer. But he was willing to. That's the amazing thing. Paul was willing to. And in the end, he's hunted down like the way he hunted Christians down, right?
So, I think that, you have a couple stories there, about persecution, but I would like to just kind of preface it again by saying, so what kind of persecution is Jesus talking about here? We said for righteousness' sake, right? If you want to live in right relationship with God. So, and we also made the distinction of saying, like, well, if you do something wrong, something bad, then of course you shouldn't have a reason to rejoice. Exactly. And Paul in Romans says, like, if you're punished by doing something wrong, then there's no rejoicing in that because you deserve it. But if you are, discipline or something when he talks about the authorities, right? In chapter 13, I believe. But verses 11 and 12 of this, he continues on, because this is blessed are the persecuted. But then it continues like, blessed are you when they curse you, when they say bad things about you, stab you, and so mock you,
lie about you.
There you go. So all of those things. So what I kind of wrote down here was like, it says, not only that, count yourself blessed every time people put you down or throw you out or speak lies about you to discredit me. It's about Jesus. So it's not about you, right? It's because you're doing something that is honoring God, which in return goes against the world system. And again, this is Jesus saying the Beatitudes because he was instituting the new kingdom system, right? And I just wrote, it says, what is when we live in ways that will threaten others' lifestyles. All right, other people's beliefs or convictions or traditions or habits or the system. When we choose to live by God's truth, it will oppose the lies of the world and Satan's system. And obviously, this is going to result in aggression and offense against believers. As long as you conform to the world, they're going to leave you alone. You go along with what they say or with what they do, and with sin, hey, you're just one of us.
Right.
But then if you say, hey, no, I can't do that. No, that's wrong. No, that's violating God's covenant or God's truth or this and that. And I can't stand for that. And I can't support that. And I can't endorse that. Well, you'd immediately become the enemy.
Yeah. And even the gospel accounts support that idea as the leaders, the religious leaders were persecuting Jesus.
I know.
It was because their way of life was being threatened.
Yeah.
Their nation was being threatened.
Yeah.
Their standing with Rome was being threatened.
Mm-hmm.
Their way of everything in life was being threatened by the simplicity of the gospel of the kingdom.
He challenged their lifestyle, their worldview, their system.
Right.
And they didn't like that.
No, not at all. And that's what's happening. I mean, I think that's what's happening today in our political spectrum. We don't want to be political, but on either side of an issue, somebody's getting challenged and nobody likes it.
Of course.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And so we respond. And now the speeches towards each other has become so hateful.
Mm-hmm.
Hateful speech leads to hateful behavior.
Yeah. And we forget that, it says Jesus didn't say go into the world and cause trouble and stir up riots and things like that because of my name's sake. He said, actually, we just read it. We just did that last week. Blessed are the peacemakers, right? But inevitably, the message of the gospel challenges sin and darkness and death, right?
Yeah, and the powers that be.
And the powers that be, exactly.
Because have you ever just wondered why were Christians hated so much in communist countries, right? Persecuted and put to death and imprisoned, and other nations as well. And sometimes I just scratch my head and go, it doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense, the hatred that gets poured out towards followers of Jesus in these places at these certain times. Yeah, but it happens, and it's what Jesus. We talk about embracing the promises of Jesus, the promises of God, and one of those promises is that you will be persecuted. He told his disciples, you're going to be taken before governors and kings, and as you read the book of Acts, that plays out. Yeah, and we don't know exactly what happened to John, but all of the apostles, the disciples, suffered death. Yeah, for their faith. Yeah, right. They did. It cost them the same as it cost Jesus. It cost them. Yeah, and they were willing to do that. Right? And
this whole idea of persecution is because the way that if you're living for righteousness' sake, like we say, blessed are those who are persecuted for righteousness' sake. Then that means that everywhere you go, where people know what you stand for, it's going to make them feel uncomfortable. So if they're getting drunk, if they're acting stupid and foolish, if they're engaging in illicit immoral behavior, like flirting with, well, you're married, right? If you go cheating or lying or gambling or being addicted to something or living together with somebody that you're not married to, all of these other immorality sins, but including gossip and including, envy and jealousy and stuff like that. Every time they look at you or they see you, if you're living for righteousness' sake, they will either turn around and avoid you or they'll hate you. And that is what Jesus is saying. Like that, you have a couple of stories about persecution. Yeah. But then we'll talk about kind of like a little bit about what persecution kind of looks like for us here.
Sure. Well, one story, and this happened probably 1988, 89, 88, somewhere in there. The church I was an associate pastor of at that time, we were friends with an organization and people and missionaries, native missionaries, called Gospel for Asia. And they had a monthly newspaper they put out with stories about the mission. And they were, it was dedicated to raising up native missionaries in all these Asian countries. And the biggest focus was India. Nepal, Sri Lanka, and then Cambodia and on. And so we read a story one morning as some of the men were getting together before church, and it was at the time there was a lot of persecution of believers from Sikh Hindus. Okay. And so without remembering exactly all the details, the story goes similar to this, but it's a true story, is that these Sikhs come into the church setting, and threaten the pastor, and he flees. He literally runs out the door for his life. They follow him into a field, and they run him down and
Kill him.
lop off his head with a sword.
Unbelievable.
The next day,
But I love this. Yeah, I love this
The next
punchline
day,
here.
his son takes his place,
And goes out back to the church and
goes
preaches.
back to the church, and steps into what calling his father had.
That's amazing.
That really inspired us as we read it that morning, and it made us pray. It made us go, our life might be focused on the wrong thing here, right?
Yeah, and as you say this, I mean, it's just really hitting me right now. It's the difference between living to please ourselves and living to please God.
Right.
Because that guy, well, the guy that was beheaded, he was living not for himself. He had a different idea. And so this is, I think, where the promise comes when it says, because theirs is the kingdom of heaven.
Yeah.
They're looking for a reward that is not an earthly reward.
Right.
They're looking to a citizenship of a different country. They're looking for an inheritance that doesn't rot here on earth.
Yeah.
And so their whole hearts, minds, and whole being is focused in it's that's what they're looking for. So the boys, the pastor's son, he had no doubt in his heart.
Right.
This is what my life is worth living for now.
Right.
And yet, really, when we contrast it with, like you said, maybe we have the wrong focus.
Yeah.
So
yeah, well, I just was just thinking as you were talking, how much of my energy and my focus is really on just earthly rewards.
Living for us.
We're living for us.
We
want good life, right?
Yeah.
We want good things.
Mm-hmm.
And we're kind of tricked into thinking, well, we're not tricked, somewhat tricked, but there are blessings that are promised in the scriptures, but we're kind of tricked into this thinking that if I just do all the right things and live a good life, that there's a reward, right? A good, nice house, a nice car, a good retirement, peace.
You said it. I mean,
neighborhood,
we work every day to be as comfortable as we can.
Basically.
I mean, that's the focus of us.
Yeah.
And even the American dream. Nothing wrong with being successful and being hard worker, right? You work hard, you provide for your family. All those things are awesome. We're called to do that, right? Work the land, and all that stuff. That's a blessing. That's something that God created us to do. But when we do it for our comfort and for our own gain, it's like we try to avoid. I mean, culture today tells us to try to be as happy as we can, as comfortable as we can, as cush as we can. And what is sadly, the dreams of a lot of teenagers out there is like, I want to get rich.
Yeah.
I want to travel. I want to have, again, like I said, there's nothing wrong with being successful, but where's your focus?
Right. And what is that success for?
Yeah, exactly.
What is it
for you?
Right.
Yeah.
Because you can use your success for yourself. Obviously, we all tend to do that. But you can also use your success as a means of furthering God's kingdom or being a light to a dark place or darkness in general.
And sometimes I think I'm very I know I suffer from being judgmental. And I often think, well, a well for a community for like 3 communities or 4 communities in Africa, to drill a well altogether might cost up to $15,000. And I'm thinking, how many wealthy people out there spend that much, or even a lot more? Like when you buy yourself like an ATV or a UTV that is 25 grand or 30 grand, and you have no problem spending that money because it's for you. It's for your benefit. It's for. But then what would happen if you were like, hey, can you donate $5,000 to, for a third of the cost of that well? And it's like, oh, that's just a lot of money. But you're thinking, okay, so a well that is going to provide water for 3 or 4 communities in Africa or somewhere else in the world versus a UTV or a side-by-side or whatever toy you want to have that costs 30 grand for you to be able to go and ride the trails. Well, you might say, well, God wants me to enjoy his earth. Yeah, he does. But it's like, but but I find myself guilty of that, because in a smaller scale, sometimes I think $40 a month to support this ministry. I'm like, oh, that's a lot of money. But then I spend that much in coffee a month or more.
Right.
And so I can't be judgmental that I need to let that sink in and challenge my own heart.
Mm-hmm.
But it's the same thing. So we're living for ourselves.
Yeah. And it kind of brings to light what Jesus says: if we work to preserve our lives,
We'll lose it.
we lose it. But if we'll lose our life for his purpose, for his sake, we'll find it.
So going back, because this is already at 20 minutes, it's crazy how time flies by, man.
Flies.
But it goes back to like Jesus's horrible marketing strategy, right?
Yeah.
Because we have to wrap it up and say, okay, so today society and even church sometimes tells us, so God is for you, he wants to bless you, blah blah. Literally, everything is supposed to be comfortable, he wants you to be trouble-free, etc., etc. And that's what we focus our lives on, like avoiding pain or discomfort or confrontation or struggle, stirring the pot, or be controversial, or be considered a radical, or this and that. And Jesus is actually saying, no, that's what I call you to do. Yeah. You see me? It's like, see my life, because that's what he says. Like, if they persecuted me and hated me,
they'll do the same to you, right?
Yeah. I'm the master and they did that to me. What do you think they're going to do to their servants, right?
Right.
That's a terrible marketing campaign or strategy, but that's what he did.
Yeah. And
then he said, because your reward is eternal, yours is yours is
the kingdom of heaven.
Right? Yeah, it's uncomfortable, man. I mean, it's nobody likes to hear that. Yeah. And especially you and I talking about this thing right now. I mean, it's like people are going to be like, really? You want to take all the fun away from my life? You're telling me that I need to focus more on God. And it's like, well, not me, not you. I'm not telling them, or you, and you're not telling them, or it's the scripture. That's why we are unboxing Jesus.
And as we've been going through the Sermon on the Mount in our church, and you guys started doing that now a couple months in your church. Mm-hmm. And as we've been doing this, I don't know, since March. When did we start the podcast?
Yeah, March. Mm-hmm.
It probably for the first time in my life, I'm getting a better sense of what the kingdom of God is. Mm. Like it's always been an idea that I struggled to get my mind around. But this has been amazing going through the Sermon on the Mount.
Yeah.
And just seeing as Jesus came, he was just offering there's another way.
Yeah.
It's not the left or the right of politics. Mm. It's the way of Jesus. Mm-hmm. If you're poor in spirit, if you feel like you're lacking, you're not measuring up, come on, the kingdom of heaven is yours.
Yeah.
Yours is the kingdom of God.
Yeah.
Are you sorrowful, mournful for the things that have taken place in your life or are taking place in your life? Mm-hmm. Or it's not going in the right direction, and you know what? Life around you is all screwed up. The world is screwed up.
Yeah.
Come, you're going to be comforted.
Yeah.
Right. Mm-hmm. And now this what we're reading today, it follows all the way to if you've been persecuted, because actually this passage here is a call to those who are already feeling that persecution. Maybe they didn't measure up to the box that had been created for them, right?
Yeah. And
if you don't fit in, sometimes you're persecuted. Sometimes you're spoken against. People, just mistreat you because you don't measure up.
Yeah.
Well, here's the kingdom of heaven for you. So it's this whole another way of living and thinking and being. Like, you posted this morning, I was going to answer you, and then I was going to put an answer. You talked about a biblical worldview and Christians, and so my thought went to right away. What it means to be a Christian means 100 different things to 100 different people.
Correct.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
But here's this kingdom.
Jesus is very clear.
Offering.
Yeah. And he's very clear about it.
He's very clear. And it's this beautiful offer.
Mm-hmm.
It's not simple. Mm-hmm. It's simple in terms of how he defines it, right? Live in humility, live with kindness, live with
the
love.
the guidelines and the structure of it is simple.
Right.
Following it, though,
Following takes a death to ourselves.
And no wonder why he said you need to take up your cross daily.
Right.
I just want to say, before we end, I think that's a lot of churches, a lot of leaders, a lot of pastors, a lot of people we have gotten it wrong. For a long time, I think that the church has tried to make the church fit into the world. And we've tried to become like the world so that the world will come to us. And what a lie.
Right.
I mean, that is so completely opposite of what Jesus said. It's like we adopted things of the world. We adopted, and I was guilty of that too. I've been guilty of that. But, it's because we want to be accepted by others. It's a craving of the human heart. That's why we're on social media.
Mm-hmm.
That's why we want to matter, to be valued, to accepted, included. I mean, why do we post such trivial things on Facebook? Why do we do that? Like, oh, look at what I did today. Oh, look at who I was with today. Oh, we think that it is to be more relevant. But, like I said, and even lately, not lately, but as of not too long ago, I used to believe in that. Like, oh, I just got to be out there. I got to be out there. I got to be out there. It's like, no, people don't care to know that I was hanging out with my kid today and how proud I mean, you be proud of your children, be proud of accomplishments but the world doesn't need to know that, because it's like,
no, because we're just getting kudos for ourselves.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
A like and a good comment, and it makes us feel good about ourselves. And it's like, no. But anyway, so we're almost at 27 minutes here. So any closing thought that you have?
Well, what I just thought about here in my notes, Isaiah 53, 7 and 9. And, the Isaiah 53 is just one of the most beautiful and, to me, profound passages in all the scriptures as it describes the Messiah, who he would be 750 years before he came onto the scene.
Yeah.
And this is just part of it. He was oppressed. He was afflicted. Yet he opened not his mouth. Like a lamb that is led to the slaughter, and like a sheep before its shears is silent, so he opened not his mouth. By oppression and judgment he was taken away. And as for his generation, who considered that he was cut off out of the land of the living, stricken for the transgression of my people. He made his grave with the wicked and with a rich man in his death, although he had done no violence and there was no deceit in his mouth. And that's just a, there's so much more to that passage than those two verses, or three verses. But Jesus shows us how to stand and how to live in persecution. You just think about him before Pilate as he's suffering the accusations of the people, the accusations of the religious leaders, the questions of the Roman government. He didn't revile. He didn't speak back against. He submitted himself to the process, but he stood and he stood firm in a beautiful way.
Yeah.
That really impacts me as I see that picture.
Well, I mean, you can just say, just to close this, he didn't ask us to do something that he didn't actually come to do himself. Right. I mean, that he is truly the ultimate example, because he suffered for righteousness' sake to the point of death. Yeah. And death on a cross, death on a criminal. So we can't be like, well, I mean, that's so unfair of Jesus to ask us to do that. No,
he did it himself.
He came to tell us that's the way to live, and then he showed us how to. And
he promised that that's what it would be like if we followed him. So it's not like we go into it without knowing that.
That's right.
Well, we do go into to it without knowing that, because we're not told that part.
Exactly. We're usually told Jesus loves you and it's okay.
Yeah. Right. And that part's true.
Well, yeah, of course.
That part's true, right? Because we can get really heavy in these kind of talks, but this needs to be talked about, because we don't talk about it enough.
I know.
Yeah.
And this is what Unboxing the Beatitudes is all about. So thanks, Dave. I appreciate your thoughts and your heart, and hope everything, everybody is blessed by this. And let us know your comments again, your questions. We'll love to hear what you have to say. So God bless.
Yeah. God bless you. Thanks for joining us as we unbox Jesus.
See you next